self-deceptions are rooted in beliefs which at some point in the past we seriously entertained, as it was awareness of our faults and the pain that accompanied them that produced the deceptions in the first place. Thus, deep down it can be said that we all know the manner in which we deceive ourselves.
The breakup of the United Kingdom.
Then on mainstreaming of hate and the threat to democracy in the UK, I think what this part of the report shows us is that it's not just fringe politicians like Nigel Farage who are feeding those dangerous narratives about minorities from outside Parliament.
Look, whichever way you cut this, immigration is the number one issue in British politics. It has been for some years. The opinion polls are astonishing. 77% of the British public want cuts to the numbers coming into Britain, and over half the voters want a reduction to near zero.
Racism is systemic. It's already part of our legislature.
Britain, 400 years ago, started going out into the world. It colonised and conquered a lot of the world. I said that gently, but it could have been horrendous. Let's be clear about that. And here I am, having grown up in this country, have been born of this country. And actually, the truth is, it's a myth that there's one English ethnicity. There's not.
We don't need people like Nigel Farage to patrol the Kent coast if we've got MPs like Natalie Elphicke posting videos to her Twitter claiming that refugees are breaking into Britain whilst posing next to a dinghy. And that fear-mongering, that legitimises existing far-right movements who are using the Channel crossings to attack migrants' rights.
But while the concept of sovereignty can be clearly interpreted, its application in the real world is not always so straightforward. Especially in today's modern era, what goes on inside a country can affect us all.
And I'd also say, and Joe mentioned this as well, that it's not just politicians who are helping to mainstream hate. It's media coverage that plays a role in that as well. So, for example, GB News, Spectator, parts of the Telegraph have all platformed those voices, or, you know, we see every day in parts of the media, the right-wing media, this sort of hateful language and fear-mongering. We've also seen, and I think this is not just kind of exclusive to parts of the right-wing media, but also parts of the media that would usually be considered to be quite mainstream and sort of centre-left. But there's been a huge increase in hate crimes.
Speaker, मैं ये बात वाज़े कर देना चाहता हूँ इस जत्थे के सरबराह को कि तुम्हारी डिक्टेशन नहीं चलेगी, ये हाउस खुद फैसला करेगा। हमें शफाफ इलेक्शन कराने हैं, कब कराने हैं ये ऐवान फैसला करेगा।
So this is what we have. A helpless government in Islamabad and a former prime minister who says he's waging a jihad against them. The casualty will be Pakistan's economy and its people. You see, political instability is not new in this country. Pakistan has perhaps learned to live with it.
And I think what editors need to understand, and perhaps they probably do understand, but what they put into their papers can have very real consequences for the communities that their journalists and their commentators target. So, for example, another example that Joe mentioned, but the flippancy with which Boris Johnson took a smear that originated in the far right about concerns about Keir Starmer and used that to attack Keir Starmer in Prime Minister's questions. And in doing that, he not only risked Keir's safety, he not only emboldened those far-right activists who mobbed Keir Starmer and David Lammy outside Parliament.
How is it that here in England you can only claim that Englishness effectively, Jean, if you are white? The truth is, there's one English ethnicity. because England has always been a country in which Huguenots, Danes, all sorts of people have passed through.
But he also made a mockery of very serious issues, the issue of sexual abuse.
When I took a DNA test, I actually had Scottish in me, probably because as a result of that, someone somewhere, frankly, got their leg over with one of my ancestors, and I've got Scottish blood running through me. I said that gently, but it could have been horrendous. Let's be clear about that. And here I am.
And yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, I can't believe that it needs to be said, but that is an issue that people shouldn't be using to score cheap political points.
It's a very negative way.
Well, I'm sorry for that,
but it is negative. It's a negative way to describe the fact that people meet one another, they fall in love, they have kids, they move borders, sometimes through war, sometimes through economic reasons, and they become what they become when they are of that country. Here in England, you can only claim that Englishness effectively, Jean, if you are white.
I think the wider sort of a continuation of that point is that disinformation has consequences, and it erodes people's trust in political institutions. So I think the report said that that faith in our democracy is currently at an all-time low, and over half of people do not believe that democracy is working in the UK. And I think that a lot of us would agree with that, at least to some extent, but our solutions are different. So we have to be putting forward those solutions, because at the moment, when there's that erosion of trust, that makes it much easier for conspiracy theorists to recruit people, to get people into their fold, and to poison their minds with this far-right rhetoric. So to conclude then, I think what the report shows us is that there isn't just one separate sphere of influence that the far right exercises its power in. There are multiple different factors that come together to create this environment where conspiracy theories, where the far right, where anti-democratic politics thrive. And at the moment, we have a political and a media elite that simply isn't accountable to the people.
The truth is, it's a myth that there's one English ethnicity. There's not, because England has always been a country in which Huguenots, Danes, all sorts of people have passed through.
I think as well, which I'm sure other people will go into more detail in, but people are still suffering from the effects of the pandemic, from the long-term economic but also psychological impacts. And at the same time, the NHS remains underfunded. Basic living costs are rising, benefits have been cut, wages for most workers have been frozen. So our political system is clearly in need of reform to ensure that people feel more connected to democracy and to democratic institutions. We've got to invest in our communities instead of pushing through further funding cuts to local authorities, to community centres, to health services, benefits. And it's only through bringing communities together that hope can triumph over hate. And that's why I hope that people will engage with Hope Not Hate's community engagement programmes. They're so important. And it's exactly those types of initiatives that will help make our communities more resilient to resisting the far right.
Now that sounds very cosy, doesn't it?
Things weren't always organized this way.
And that problem has to be faced up to. If you keep ignoring it, it will simply get worse until you can't ignore it any longer, and then you will have to face up to it. And things that can't go on forever don't. So that is the problem. That is the issue. That is what we're facing.
But they've seen it now, and that's true. So
Bye-bye.